Welcome back to our superhero battle room. We are post MIC. What is MIC? Military Influencer Conference. If you don't know about it, you need to go and Google it. It was a great time with 2,300 military, veterans, first responders, mil spouses, vet spouses, and also great patriots that are supporting the brand of military innovation and also connection. So one of our guests is Samatha Sliney, and if I hacked it, she's going to correct me when we get on live. She is a mil spouse and veteran, dual-hatted. I don't have too many of those who have served our country and now empowers our community to have both career and a family. So we're going to bring her alive and get this party started. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Awesome. I got you. Just wanted to make sure. Technology is funny some days. So we're just going to jump right in it while technology stays reliable and talk about both that you married into and joined the military. What inspired both those types of service?
So I wanted to serve in the military right after high school. And I am not from a military family. And so my parents, when I brought that to them, were like, absolutely not. You're going to college. But fast forward 6 months later, my now husband, who I went to middle school and high school with, was in the Army. So we started dating, and that was like my first touch point with the military. We stayed together through him going through basic training, airborne school, the Q course. He's a Green Beret, and eventually got married. But before that, I graduated from undergrad and went to law school. And when I was in law school, quite frankly, I needed to do an internship after my first year of law school. And we're local to Fort Liberty, Pope Army Airfield. At the time, it was Pope Air Force Base. And I went to the local legal office and was like, hey, can I volunteer with you guys? I need to do an internship. And I really fell in love with everything that the judge advocates or JAGs were doing. So that experience coupled with I wanted to serve, I've always had a dedication to public service and government service. And then also, quite frankly, seeing my spouse do really cool things as a Green Beret, I was like, well, that sounds like a good option for me. So that's how I ended up coming on to active duty as an Air Force JAG. And then, like I said, we were together from my start in undergrad all the way through law school, and we got married right before I came on active duty.
Wow, that is a lot. So parents said no. It's amazing that parents say no, but usually over 18. Like my son turned 17 tomorrow. I only got one more year of my no to be legal. As of next year, this time, I don't get to have that legal no. We can't go over and say that. It's amazing that we still hold the reins to the end. So you went over and legally got married, you legally became part of the world, and you went over and now go over and do legal stuff all
Mhm.
around the world. So that's amazing. So how long have you been part of the veteran and mil spouse community? Because that's dual hat. That must be hard to go over and weigh because I read some of the stories from Leave No Mil Spouse Behind, the book my wife published, and it was one of the ladies. Her name is Sarah, and she was doing both. And she would have to transform during lunch to go to these mil spouse meetings just so she could be appreciated as a mil spouse and not just as a veteran. She had to literally transform her life because also females get like, hey, thank you for serving your husband. But I'm like, no, I'm kind of both, you specifically, or hey, I am the veteran. So how do you go over and balance both those parts of life?
I haven't read the book, but I'll put it on my list. And I agree with Sarah that it can be tricky at times. I transitioned off of active duty the 1st of April of this year. So I never really appreciated transition and the emotional roller coaster that it is until I did it, which I think are most people that transition off active duty. I am now in the Air National Guard in New Jersey. Um, it is very hard for me sometimes to identify as a military spouse because my experience, I think, is more informed by being a servicewoman than it is by being a military spouse. And yes, when I'm going to the spouses get together, and sometimes there are topics where there are concerns or they're upset or frustrated with a certain process. I don't share those views because I understand the process because I've lived it, I've seen it. My last assignment on active duty was in a special operations unit. And so it gave me a unique perspective on what service is, especially last minute deployments and things of that nature. So it can be really hard for me to relate to some of their experiences because it hasn't been my lived experience. Because quite honestly, I've always identified as a servicewoman, probably before a military spouse. Now, I'm very proud to be a military spouse. I just think when you have those what I call my dual personas, it can make it a little challenging to relate to spouses that haven't also had that active duty or servicewoman perspective or service member perspective. So I totally relate to that. I have to try very hard to understand that some of the spouses haven't had my same experiences, but I try to use that as an education opportunity and say, hey, to the extent that classification rules allow me to kind of go into that, explain why a process is the way that it is. Like, yes, this sounds ridiculous because you don't understand the whole process, but this is what the whole process is. So I've been balancing this from day one. I think the question goes to how long. I've been a part of the MilSpouse community since I came on to active duty and since I've been a veteran. And it continues to be ever evolving. At any one given time, I lean into one persona or the other. And also based on the crowd that I'm in. But I'm always very honest about who I am. I try to be authentically me, that I am a servicewoman, I am a veteran, I am a military spouse. But I think that people with any variety of backgrounds, I think what they bring to the table is a unique perspective that others can learn from. And so I try to use it to benefit others. Like I said, I have a dedication to public service. So but it's really been something that's just been my life from day one. I was never just a military spouse, and I've never just been a servicewoman.
Yeah. Now you're having a triple identity crisis or like blending a blessing. So thinking about you got the going to the guard, getting out of active duty, now being a mil spouse, and then also jumping into the civilian world as of April. That's like a sticker shock for me. I'm thinking like we just finished Mick. It's October 12th, one day before my son's 17th birthday. That's how I remember numbers and everything else. And I'm thinking, you just only been 6 months born into these new three identities. So how is that overall transition going?
For me, it's going, I think, well. Like I said, it has been an emotional roller coaster. So I'll start with like why I transitioned off of active duty. I was up for an assignment. My husband and I had been blessed. We are in inter service, so he's Army, I was Air Force, or I am Air Force. And we were very lucky to our first assignment. We were not together, but we did not have children, and we were only 50 miles apart. And then the last 3 assignments, we were co-located, so we were not separated. But I was at a point in my career where there, quite frankly, because Pope Army Airfield is no longer an Air Force base, and there's just not there's only like 6 Air Force judge advocate billets here. There weren't really any jobs left for me to do. So we were kind of reaching a point where we were probably going to have to be separated because he is pretty much homesteaded here at Fort Liberty. And it was hard because I do a lot of work internal to the Department of the Air Force with the Women's Initiatives Team, which is a barrier analysis working group chartered to identify and eliminate barriers for women. Because we know, based on data, that between the 10 and 12-year mark, service women separate at higher rates than their male counterparts. And so I was at a place where I was in that bracket, and I felt like I had become the statistic that I had fought so hard against. And took a lot for me to work through that mentally and emotionally. And also I felt like I wasn't leaving because I felt like I was done. I felt like I was almost being forced to make that decision. Now, I don't feel like the Air Force was forcing me to do it. It was kind of just the situation we found ourselves in. So that was tough. And oh, by the way, that was all happening while I just had a newborn because I have a 16-month-old. So throw in like the postpartum hormones, all of that stuff. But now, fast forward, I was extremely lucky in that I had a civilian position, an attorney position at the Joint Special Operations Command, where I literally I was active duty on a Thursday and showed up as a federal civilian on a Tuesday. And then fast forward to that, I was given this great opportunity 2 weeks ago. I started my new job with the Defense State Liaison Office, where I am now the Southeastern Regional Liaison for the Department of Defense. And what we do, for those that don't know what that office does, is we are basically the connection between the DoD and all the state legislatures. So I educate all the state legislatures in the Southeastern United States on military and service member friendly law and policy, and ensure the states are creating law and policy that benefits their military population.
Whew, man, almost makes me want to go to sleep for all the transitions and everything that you're carrying. Just the job title sounds like expensive baller. If they're not paying you, I advocate more. So before we get into another part of your identity, which is actually a fourth part we haven't shared with the audience, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. So just give me 2 seconds and we will get
You
back.
have served. No matter if it was in the military or civilian service, you deserve to live good. Live good in health. Live good in wealth. Live good in so much more. At Live Good, the global wholesale buyer club, we empower you to take your mission to the next level. Are you ready to live good? We all struggle in life. No matter the barriers, we do not need to stay there. Each day is an opportunity to step into better health. Each day is an opportunity to step into wealth. Each day is an opportunity to step into dreams. Live Good, the global wholesale buyers club, empowers all these steps and more. Ready to be empowered? Grab the link to learn more.
Welcome back to War Hero Superhero. Before we went on our sponsor break, Samantha was talking about 3 identities that she had to transition or transform in, and we're going to get back with her. She actually has a 4th one. I don't even know how she handles it, because even if you put 2 on each hand, just doesn't work well for me. So she can go over and explain how this next transformation is. Hey, Samantha, looks like we got you back, and we're going to talk about that 4th identity before we went on break. Is what made you pivot now to become an author? I mean, I thought you already had no time already, but I guess you made more time. So what made you pivot to become an author? Because that's how I met you. I didn't know all the other things. I saw the awesome table and the awesome books, and then we scanned QR codes and we made this happen. So what made this journey so important to becoming an author?
So as a child, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was an author. From a very, very young age. My mom has little books of stapled together paper where I wrote stories as a child. So it was always something that was on my bucket list. The book that we actually wrote, and we started with a children's book, and I say we because it's written by a co-author, Megan Biles, who is a good friend of mine that also serves in the Air Force. We both co-chaired the Women's Initiative team that I mentioned earlier, and Megan was pivotal, I will say critical, in changing Air Force policy around flying while pregnant for female aviators. And she had a huge success with that, basically shifting the narrative from a no but to a yes if kind of narrative. So you could fly as long as you met certain criteria versus no, you cannot fly at all. Huge from a readiness standpoint for the Air Force. And it's serving as a model for all the other services to kind of take up the same policy type change. But we had been invited to the Secretary of the Air Force's, Secretary Kendall's office to kind of celebrate that win, which was a phenomenal experience. But we were leaving, and you hear in the Pentagon, they talk about the glass doors, right, where all the senior leadership sits. There are really glass doors. But we were leaving his office after this celebration, and Megan is a poet. That's all I can say. She's a very talented poet. And she said something, a rhyme about pregnant while, like a mom flying while she was pregnant. She said something, I said something back to her, and we were just joking and being funny. And we did it back and forth 3 or 4 times. And then all of a sudden I was like, we have got to write a children's book, because I believe in my core that policy change informs culture. So at that point, we had changed the policy, but we recognized that there is still a culture around and a stereotype around pregnancy being a limiting condition. And then also this idea of balancing career and family for women can be, right. People just think you either shouldn't do it or you can't do it. So that's where the idea for the book came from. And about over the course of a year, we wrote our manuscript and then worked with an illustrator to get the illustrations done. And then ultimately got the book published. And it really is. It's told from the perspective of a older sibling watching their mother be pregnant with their younger sibling and watching her in a variety of careers. Most of the careers shown in the book are male-populated career fields or stereotypically male-populated career fields. Think engineer, scientist, aviators, military members, congressmen and women, lawyers, those types of career fields where you typically, I think for most people, when you say a scientist, what pops in your head is probably a man. So that's how it came to be. We were also we wanted every mother and child to be able to see themselves in the book. And so we were very cognizant that diversity was represented in the hopes that everybody could see themselves in it when they were reading it. But that was the pivot to being an author. And now I'm in the phase of, how do you promote the book? How do you get it into the hands of families so that we can plant that seed in children at a really young age?
Yeah, because that's the thing about identity is that it is formed early, usually between 8 to 12 years old is what you see, and it can take another 20 to 40 years to go break that identity if it's a negative identity. We got self-help books, we got marriage books, we got all these things, and it's great to go over and get this set up now because women are becoming more empowered. If people haven't been following and watching, you're going to see next 10 to 15 years, if you're not investing in women businesses and women initiatives and things of nature, you're not only going to be behind the power curve, but you're also going to be behind the economic power curve. That's why I like Marco Polo. Great app. I don't get paid for it, but woman CEO that came out to Mick a few years ago. And it allows you to stay connected to the family. So it's definitely key. Can we see a couple of pictures of the book just to go over and a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So here's the cover. Mm-hmm. And then because we are on, there's that. And then I definitely want to make sure here's a scientist. And let me get to the military one. Here's a plumber. So something you would typically think of a male in. But I do want to show the servicewoman one since we are on a veterans podcast. Super important. Let me get to that page. Here we go. So there's that. And then probably the page I'm the most proud of is really the ending here. And I'll show that to the crowd because, like I said, it kind of brings together that full picture of representation.
Yeah, and this camera does not give it justice. So definitely get online on amazon.com/allthingsourmommycan/DP. And then the rest of the code you can read because it's a video podcast. That's a little hexadecimal like type code. So very much appreciate you went over and shared that. So
and if anybody would like a signed copy, please hit me up on any of my social media feeds. I'm happy to facilitate getting you a signed copy as well.
There you go. And on the feed, it's linkedin.com/in/Samatha Arlington/Sliney Silney. If I hacked your last name, I probably already have. I apologize. So do you want to pronounce it for the audience? How do you actually pronounce your last name?
It's Sliney.
Slimy. Okay. I did not expect that. I was trying to make it.
People try to make it more complex than what it is. It's usually people's first reaction, but they're like, it can't be the first reaction. It's got to be something else. Yep. So it's
there's always different pronunciations of every name. If it pronounces my name Faust and it's Faust, and then like I know a Faust, and I'm like, no. And then they'll put an O or put an S or a Z and everything else, especially when you're on the phone. Just so you know, F's and S's sound the same. If you're ever on a phone call, you got to go over and pronounce them. I figured that out too. So back to where we were talking with you, because my name's not as important as yours in this series. Secret fuels and pressure when tough times come. You have gone through many identities. Some of them you're carrying concurrently. Some of them you're making the transformation into. And you probably ran into a lot of tough times being active duty, dual military, the kids and everything else. The constant changes of life, and especially having a husband that's signed to one of the special branches of our branches in the Green Berets, if I remember correctly. So how do you go over and deal with all that when those pressure and tough times come?
So my biggest piece of advice is find your why, right? Like what keeps me going? For me, it's my children. Um, at least since they've been born, it's been my children, right? They are my secret fuel. Like why I have to get through something is for them, so that I can support them and I can show you what it is, show them what it's like to be resilient or to push past things. The second part of that is surrounding myself with people that I can reach out to, whether that be for mentorship, sponsorship, or just to vent. Many times I have good friends, my co-author on the book, Megan. There were times where I will call her and I'm like, hey, I just need to vent. I just need somebody to listen to me. Um, and then there's other times, well, I'll call her and I'll be like, hey, I need your advice on something. So I, those are really the two things is my why. I fall back on that all the time when things get tough or the pressure. I have a lot going on because of all of my multiple personas and things that I'm doing. And then also building your tribe around you so that you have those folks that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can just go to in a time of need. I've been very, very lucky to have a very loyal, strong tribe of women and men that have supported me throughout my career.
That's the beautiful thing about you having the multiple personas in a sense that you have multiple tribes. When Military Influencer Conference got started and we both just got back from there, it was basically just military men and veterans and everything else. Now you fast forward to 2024, the numbers are over 60% female. Majority of them are mil spouses, vet spouses, and also dual veteran or mil spouse. So in that particular regard, ladies and gentlemen, that if you feel that you're left alone at your bases and everything else, the Military Influencer Conference is a great catalyst. And especially if you're a woman, because now the men are small in number. So definitely if you need to go over and be blessed out there, I would highly recommend next year, September 21st to 24th. So let's get back into our last question of this interview is 3 superhero tactics. Our easiest and hardest question, no matter who I give it to, no matter how early or how late or anything else. So I want you to either imagine yourself probably 10, 15 years ago, or maybe with a client that you go and have. How do you go over and give them 3 tactics? Like it's an elevator thing. You have like 90 seconds or you're on a thread and you're giving them 3 tactics to take them from a surviving mentality to a thriving mentality.
It's a great question. So I hit a little bit on the first, usually my go-to is your why. Like I see that as a superhero tactic. For anyone who has a strong sense of purpose and a strong why, I feel like that makes you even that more resilient. But I've already said that, so I'll do 3 others, but that's my big one. The next one that I've used quite frequently, at least in the work that I've done, because I do a lot of public policy work, so policy advocacy, legislative advocacy is you don't take no from someone who can't give you a yes. Early on in my career as a servicewoman, I didn't recognize that. And there were many times where, through the chain of command or whatnot, you would have someone, not necessarily me, would have a great idea or would need something. And the answer was, no, you can't do that. What I have since learned and what I know now that I wish I had known then was to know who can tell you yes and to not take a no. And for those in the military, you can do that respectfully. There's a respectful way to say, and there are mechanisms, where you can file various complaints and do things like that to get your question, your problem, your issue to the person who has the authority to adjudicate it. So that's the first one. Second one is don't walk past a problem. Much of the work that I have done internal to the Department of the Air Force that was the catalyst and the inspiration for the children's book really was because I was experiencing a problem. For me, it had to do with lactation support at work, and would have been much easier just to walk past that. But I recognized that if I was experiencing it, there was likely at least one more person out there that was experiencing it. And I wasn't necessarily doing it for myself. I was doing it for all the other junior service members, in my case, airmen and guardians that maybe didn't have a voice to use or didn't know how to make change. And so I really encourage you, like, not to walk past the problem, even if you feel like it is only impacting you. I can promise you there is someone else out there that's impacting it, and they may not have a voice, or they may be in a much tougher spot than you are, or going through a mental, emotional kind of downhill spiral over it. And you can help with that. I mean, the biggest, doing public policy work, the biggest compliment and the thing that just makes my day is when I get an email from an individual saying, what your organization did or what you helped do made me stay in the military. You made it so I could continue to serve, or you made it so my transition out went smoothly. I felt like I had the support and the resources I need to be a successful veteran or to be a successful military spouse. So don't walk past a problem. That's one that I kind of live by. It's kind of my mantra. Oh, and the third one, I would say, like I said, build your tribe. Your tribe doesn't have to be big. It just has to be people that are going to have your back in those times of need. You can call upon, and I have a handful of folks that I know, no matter what, if I were to call them because I was in a bad spot or something bad were to have happened, they would get on an airplane and fly across the world to come help me if they could. Also, they're the ones that, when they know I'm in a bad spot and I'm afraid that, and I'm not willing, I'm not at the point that I can ask for help or I want to ask for help, they're the ones that just step in and say, hey, we know you need help and we're going to be here. An example of that is, after I had all my kids, I was never one to like, oh, I need a meal train or anything like that. People just did it for me because they knew that I wasn't going to ask for help. And I really credit that to the tribe that I've built around me, the support network that I have around me. And I really think that helps you be, that superhero, as the kind of title of this says. It's not just you; it's really all the people that are around you that make everything you accomplish possible.
I agree. That is totally key in that too, Gar. And that's a beautiful thing that you go over and have that. And hopefully more people start establishing that. We can't just go keep doing it on our own. I think of the most recent innovation. I'm in the VR. They finally added workouts with people live. So there's two people working out with you. Mm-hmm. And everybody, at least so far, is muting themselves. And we got to stop muting ourselves. It doesn't matter where it's at, because that person could be going through the same thing. And me being, Air Force, I've seen that transformation from free the bun to the lactation places. It's kind of damaging in a sense that it's saying, hey, you get sent to the bathroom or sent to a makeshift closet. So glad that you didn't walk past the problem for our female veterans and also female male spouses. So I want to congratulate you for being on our show. I want to thank you for going on and being a blessing to our community. We're going to give you the floor one last time to either uplift your book or close us out with a quote. But then once you pause, we go to credits. So the floor is now yours.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to thank you for the opportunity for being here, and for all those listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for that level of support. If you, like I said, want a copy of the book, we would appreciate any support that you have in that endeavor. I'm happy to get you a signed copy. Please just reach out to me via my social media handles. And then, yes, thanks everyone for what they're doing for the veteran, military spouse communities. We are facing a significant recruitment and retention problem across the services. And the only way that we're going to battle those issues is if we come together to make serving better for the family, for everyone. And for those that leave, like myself, that's now a veteran, we have to make it so when they leave, they encourage others to join. And I think that maybe that has waned a bit over time. So understand that, none of these efforts are about making things easier for people. It's really about increasing readiness and increasing the lethality of the joint force, because we are pivoting to a new challenge with great power competition, and it's going to require something new of our joint force. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we have a strong military family support network, and then also a strong veteran network here that's encouraging others to join. the services. And it's just really key as we look at combating that new problem. We really need the most talented individuals that are in our services and serving. It's really critical to our success and our readiness. So I want to thank everybody from this community, however you might identify as a veteran, active duty, mil spouse, whatever. Thank you for your support of the community. It truly, truly means a lot.